Hi there, I'm Steve Smith, President and CEO of Airline, and I'll be leading this breakout session today. Thank you for joining us. This session is Building the Capacity of Nonprofits Through Essential Services. First, let me thank the US Chamber of Commerce Foundation for organizing and hosting this panel discussion. I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists, Christine Ortega, who is the International Senior Advisor for Community Affairs and Grassroots for Southwest Airlines, Susie Schoenberg, who is the founder and head of Flexbook.org, and Rachel Castleman from FedEx's Global Citizenship and Corporate Social Responsibility and Volunteerism team. I'd like to start out in a second by giving each of you 5 minutes to maybe introduce yourselves and your organizations. But to those of the tuned in listeners and viewers, if there is a chat function, we will take some questions toward the end. So if you have any questions, please do feel free to put those questions in there. So if I could start, just to pass to maybe start, if it's okay with you, Christine, maybe you could give us 5 minutes of or so of some of the work you've been doing within COVID-19 and where you've partnered with nonprofits to, or where you've augmented their work. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. And again, thank you also for the Chamber of Commerce and to everybody who's joining us today. I am Christine and work with Southwest Airlines for 30 years now. And we've been building, doing outreach in the community for many years. And one of the things that we've observed through the COVID-19 inequities that are coming out from COVID-19 is that we were able to reach back to our partnerships, the existing partnerships that we have, to see what's working, what's not working, and how we need to pivot. So those ongoing relationships are really the ones that for us are providing an opportunity for us to listen, to learn, and then act. And as an example, we have, during the tragedy with George Floyd, we did reach out to our existing partners, and we wanted to listen to them and hear what it is that they have heard, and to understand better from them what we might be able to do better. And so briefly, I wanted to just kind of touch on some of these items that initiatives that we've undertaken, which is with the murder of George Floyd. We reached out to both the 100 Black Men and the National Urban League to figure out how to support them in their work in order to bring about more robust programming and support their programming in a way that might make a difference. These are partnerships we already had in place, and we gave additional funding of over $500,000 to these groups that we already had in our relationship portfolio, if you will. In addition, some of the other things that we did, we also recognized that there was a shortage of food, right? So there's food insecurities that again surfaced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we also created a giving program where anybody who donated some money to these 3 primary frontline organizations we were able to contribute to their rapid reward points in a way that might be valuable to travelers. And then the other thing that we also did in terms of just trying to pivot is that we stopped serving foods and snacks on the aircraft for a period of time. And so we knew that there were food banks across the country who needed food. So we worked very quickly to make sure that we could donate the items that we had in stock. Working with Bunzel, we worked with many food banks across the United States in every city that we serve, in addition to many other nonprofit organizations that could take advantage of this resource, right? So it was a way for us to be able to pivot the business in order to make a difference during the pandemic. The other thing that we had also in place is the program for people who are attempting to go to college and who need help, right? So we do have a program called Lanzate Takeoff Travel Award that basically helps Latino students travel to and from their university. So at this point, we also needed to pivot that program in order to figure out how to support it and be more virtual, I guess you could say, with that program. So I'm not sure if you can see my screen now for the visual that I wanted to share with you, but that was the last item that I had on for us to share.
No, I can't quite see it right now.
Okay, all right. So if needed, we can pull it up later.
That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, Southwest is a big heart as an organization, and so a lot of diversity in the program there. Rachel, maybe you could give us an update on what FedEx has been up to, which I know has been a lot.
Sure, thanks. And again, thank you for allowing us to be part of this panel today and also to engage with Chris and Susie. My name is Rachel Kesselman and I'm with FedEx. I've been at FedEx for about 13 years and spent the last 6 years working in our global citizenship team. And really, we've been working a lot with COVID since it started in January with our team members starting with the team being impacted specifically in China and, again, moving critical PPE over to that area due to the shortage. I mean, this has been sort of unprecedented year with so many disasters, starting with the Australian wildfires and then the Tal volcano. A lot of those PPE and the necessary things with face masks specifically and N95 masks, those resources went really quickly to those things. And so then if you're not in the middle of all this, you don't realize there's a worldwide shortage becoming of PPE immediately. So things started running short quickly. So we started initially shipping with trusted nonprofit partners like Direct Relief to China. And then as the pandemic began sweeping, we're still covering all the disasters that we are currently managing, like the volcano in the Philippines and earthquakes in Puerto Rico. We just, again, started using our network to provide the supplies where they were needed the most. Working with our partners, our trusted nonprofits, to really focus on how we could get, whether it was the medical supplies needed to the medical community or the frontline people helping to assist with the medical community, sending thousands of kits throughout the U.S. to low income and underserved community and local hospitals, working with nonprofits like International Medical Corps to really help get tents and other things, available medical equipment to those hospitals that were having surges in LA, Puerto Rico, New York, Detroit. And then, again, working with our teams globally on the efforts, knowing that, the downturn in the economy starts having things with food shortages and people being impacted, not being able to afford food or other just necessities like hygiene kits. So we worked with our nonprofits to really help deliver hygiene kits to people, those in need in underserved communities, homeless populations, to try to stop the spread. And then working with our corporate partners in Memphis or around the country, like International Paper, to help get food boxes with Feeding America. So we really were focusing on just a wide variety of efforts to help try to get things to where they were needed the most in a timely fashion, to stretch using our in-kind gifts that we're really good at, using our cash, and using again our relationships to really build that network. And then working also with government agencies to help make sure that we're getting through and things into customs to make sure that they're efficiently delivered. So again, that wasn't going to be the whole to get the PPE or other whatever the necessary thing was to the end user to make it as efficient as possible to deliver on that core mission of delivering it to where people the products and services are needed the most at the right time.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, FedEx with such a massive and global footprint, it's a great opportunity to do a lot of good things. Thank you, Rachel. Susie, can could you tell us a little bit about Flexport.org and Flexport, if you will?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really exciting to join this panel alongside these transportation heroes. So let me start by explaining what Flexport is. We are also a transportation company, so we help companies to bring their goods from the factory to kind of the final destination. This process, as you know, Chris and Rachel will tell you, is very, very complicated. There are like a lot of different parties involved, and so we build technology to make this process really easy and help, no matter if you manage your shipment via ocean or if you use planes or trucking for kind of the final delivery. And typically we transport shipments that are pretty large. So if like, you know, a company is sending bigger shipments. For Flexport.org, we specifically focus on solving environmental and social challenges that are related to logistics. And what we all know, and probably everyone who's listening from the nonprofit space knows, that nonprofits spend quite a lot of money on actually buying the supplies and then sending them to the people in need. And so our team helps nonprofits to ship more effectively, but also to lend our expertise to help them to respond. With regards to COVID-19, we really faced a very extraordinary disaster. And it was kind of special in many different ways. Number one, we saw, you know, the shortage of supplies that Rachel just like explained. And so many nonprofit partners that typically, you know, might maybe get goods donated or have their ways of them procuring the supplies couldn't get any PPE, right? So even big hospitals, it was really hard to get your hands on PPE. And so what we found during this crisis is that it was really helpful to have those private public partnerships. And so at Flexport.org, we activated some of our clients that we typically would, you know, do their commercial business with, that are producers of those medical supplies, and kind of matched them with nonprofits and helped to get the goods sourced for hospitals and other organizations. We also addressed kind of the public health crisis that was described, right? So it might be with regards to food, support that maybe certain children and communities in need that are usually underserved are needing. So we really tried to use our expertise in multiple ways to kind of deliver the goods. The other reason why this crisis is kind of special is that typically a lot of goods are being transported passenger planes. There are, of course, also cargo planes, but quite a lot is actually moving in the belly of passenger planes. And during COVID-19, those were grounded. And so we worked with great airlines and great companies that helped us to be really innovative, right, to provide space so that we can kind of procure space and give it to nonprofits, but also bring the goods as soon as possible to the destination. So far, we have delivered over 242 million units of PPE to 5 continents. So kind of trying to respond globally and reach as many folks in need as we can.
Great, thanks so much, Susie. I know that you and your organization, as all of your organizations, have played a tremendous role in helping get protective gear and other items to folks who are COVID-19. And I think we probably have quite a diverse group in terms of backgrounds and skill sets and understanding of shipping and logistics on the call. And you know, and so for those of you that aren't familiar with freight forwarding, it's tremendously important. Yes, you can send packages through FedEx and UPS, and that's important. But if you're shipping things in bigger quantities, you have to engage an entire industry that many of you may not even understand that exists. That's absolutely critical. So thanks to all of you for the work you're doing. Well, part of this session, I want to do some scene setting and you know, give a little bit about my organization, Airline. We're a rapid response disaster relief nonprofit supporting over 130 disaster relief nonprofit organizations by providing seats for volunteers and cargo space for vital supplies on passenger and freighter aircraft. And we respond to both natural and man-made disasters. And we can only do this by fundraising from individuals and having deep partnerships with the airlines and businesses across the aviation and aerospace sectors. In fact, we work with and do work with and have worked with each one of these organizations on this panel over time. We very much appreciate your support. But given COVID-19's unprecedented effects on the normal functioning of the economy and organizations, early into the pandemic, Airlink partnered with the Clinton Global Initiative, and we surveyed humanitarian and disaster relief nonprofits within our stakeholder networks. And the survey comprised of 26 detailed questions. Over 60 nonprofits responded, and the sample reflected a mix of organizations in terms of scale, geographic reach, resource level, and longevity. And we sought to assess the health sector and the health of the sector to clarify the following: the immediate impact of COVID-19 on humanitarian and disaster relief operations currently ongoing. Number two, the probable capacity of the sector to respond to further natural disasters, which we know are coming, and where the breaking points in the nonprofit sector might lay. And the results reveal a sector deeply impacted by COVID-19. The first question we asked was, what if a major incident, remember this survey was done a couple of months ago now, for example, a flood, hurricane, or cyclone occurs within the next 3 to 6 months? Would your organization be able to respond as it has in previous years? And so I think shockingly, only 21%, just over a fifth of the respondents said they could respond as they did in previous years. And 10% of the respondents said that they couldn't respond at all. And the remaining respondents said they could respond, but any response would be substantially reduced in terms of duration of mission, number of volunteers into the field, and resources that could be deployed. And so, as I said, we asked 26 questions, and I'm not going to take you through all 26 here. But I do want to give you some top-line figures. But I would also point out that an organization, a nonprofit, could be suffering from multiple effects all at the same time. Here's what we found. So an overwhelming majority, almost more than 3/4 of relief organizations are concerned about fundraising and are being forced to change their funding goals. 81% of responding organizations have been forced to cancel fundraising or future engagements. We're seeing that on a daily basis with things changing and eventually closing down. 75% of responding organizations have been forced to change their funding goals. And this will give most of us on the call significant concerns over the financial state of the nonprofit sector. 75% of responding organizations reported that they've been forced to significantly alter their deployment plans. 52% of responding organizations have experienced a reduction in volunteer numbers. 45% of responding organizations have been forced to close programs. And finally, 45% of responding organizations have redeployed volunteers to other projects. And to gauge sentiment as well as impact, we ask, how has the impact of COVID-19 impacted current humanitarian and disaster response operations? Not surprisingly, 78% of organizations either strongly agree or agree with the statement that it's had significant impact on their operations. So accepting the limits of the survey, it reveals a sector deeply impacted and in a state of flux and uncertainty, and one with a substantially reduced capacity to intervene in disaster response. So clearly there are some deep issues within the sector, and there's going to be a capacity issue, and there is already a resiliency issue. So I'd like to invite each of you, if you would, to think about and highlight maybe some examples, I mean, you've covered a few already, or areas where you think the private sector can best improve the functioning of the nonprofit sector, or maybe more examples of where it's helped at this time. Susie, I know you've had thoughts on this in the area of logistics. Maybe you'd like to start.
Yes. So what's really interesting, and you basically talked about kind of, the unusual ways or the new restrictions that nonprofits are seeing right now. What we found to be quite successful is to leverage our network to unlock new resources for those organizations. So for example, in March, we launched the Frontline Responders Fund. So basically we activated our own fundraising efforts. And the idea was to basically get the word out and give opportunities to organizations to help that otherwise wouldn't be in contact with those nonprofits or wouldn't be as familiar with their great work. We were able to raise over $8 million, and all of those funds went directly into enabling logistics for humanitarian aid. So basically we secured capacity, we chartered planes that then nonprofits and other organizations could use to deliver their services. So kind of, utilizing public-private partnerships to unlock new networks and new resources that otherwise nonprofits couldn't reach by themselves. Another topic is, just like skills sharing. So with regards to PPE, those are goods that are actually highly regulated. So if you want to import them and maybe you're an organization that has never shipped medical supplies before, you're facing new barriers. And so we had employees that work the organizations through kind of the regulation, because we know that nonprofits are extremely time and resource constrained, especially right now. So we will try everything to kind of lend our resources to make sure that the nonprofits can focus on delivering the COVID-19 programs, but also all the other ones that are still being needed.
Great, thank you, Susie. And Chris, what are your thoughts?
A couple of things come to mind in terms of how we can help the nonprofit sector. I think right now we need to really keep our ear to the ground and listen to the nonprofit sector, because they are the frontline responders, right? In our particular case, I think some of the things that we were able to do operationally, for example, we have what's called a medical transportation grant program, where we provide travel tickets to hospitals across the country. And there's a whole system of hospitals that we support. And those tickets are typically used by the hospital to get their patients and family to and from the hospital when they cannot afford to travel for the treatment that they need. And during COVID, what we decided to do was to just suspend the rules on how to use the tickets, so that if the hospital needed to transport medical workers, they could do that. So I think a lot of that's not unusual. I think many corporations are trying to figure out how their giving dollars or resources can just be remove the restrictions that were originally given to the nonprofits, so that they can continue to respond to the pandemic. So I think that's one example where, as a corporation, we can look internally in order to respond externally to what's happening in the real world. The other example, following kind of Susie's comments, is that we also, for the first time, took entire aircraft and converted it for just cargo shipment, which we've never done that before. It was always a combination of customers and cargo. This is the first time that we're using the aircraft just to ship cargo. The only people on there are the flight, the crew, and that's it. So that's very new for us in terms of our operation. We're working with nonprofits, we're working with medical organizations and manufacturers to get supplies where they need to be during the pandemic.
And I know, from personal experience, with Southwest and a number of our carrier partners, tremendous creativity that turning the planes into cargo aircraft overnight is, it's not really something that happens overnight, is it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think our customers too, if you look at Deloitte, who is one of our top customers, they donated more than $130,000 in their points to the University of California's academic health systems to support the travel of medical personnel in California for frontline workers. So I think everyone is trying to figure out how can they support locally, nationally, within the strength that they have.
Thank you. And Rachel, what are your thoughts?
Just got a couple things I'd like to kind of add on and share. With FedEx, I think that, again, leveraging our network, whether it's the air, whether it's ground, even with ocean containers, we have opportunities to leverage our network. And during this time, it's a really great opportunity to work with the nonprofits to really refocus and help them look at their logistics and really try to shape it in a way to make it more efficient, more cost effective, to help them really stretch those in-kind dollars that we're giving them. Also look again at opportunities to really work with our corporate peers around the community. I think a great example was when we worked with International Paper here, both headquartered in Memphis, and we wanted to get food boxes to for food insecurity out to more local food banks. So we collaborated together to really focus on, they were making the boxes, and we have the way to get the transportation, which is a win-win for Feeding America, and then all those local food banks within the communities where all of our team members live and work, to help make sure that those boxes can be filled to get to the people in most need. So again, stretching those dollars, working with your peers in your local market, in other markets, to really help, again, fight those common missions, whether it's food insecurity, whether it's getting medical testing, whether it's getting PPE, whatever those cases may be. And then also, one of the things that we've really challenged our nonprofits on is how can we, as FedEx, utilize our team members to help provide skills-based volunteering to really help drive and create change within their organizations, knowing that some of these nonprofits either can't afford certain types of professionals on their team, whether it's data analysts, whether it's logistics helps, whether even it's even helping people run financial audits and cycles. Again, how can we leverage our team and our network to help make a difference within these nonprofits? And I know that tomorrow there'll be a session where Gigi Wolf, she'll be talking about how our team work with Team Rubicon to actually develop using our routing systems to help prepare routing systems to deliver meals to seniors in markets like Los Angeles and other local large communities, to get those meals to the people who need it the most, who couldn't leave their house. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to leverage those really highly skilled people within your organization to help deliver on the mission. I know that I use a lot of skills-based volunteers. When we're importing PPE, there's a lot of rules and regulations that I don't know about with customs and importing and making sure it's a seamless transaction. So how can we leverage our, the FedEx trade networks and the custom brokers to really help make sure those imports of masks with direct relief come in seamlessly, or they're transported to other countries seamlessly? So the logistics part isn't the issue. It's, working also with, those skilled people and the government agencies to make sure that it happens in a timely thing to get the materials to those frontline team members and also those frontline workers in the hospitals who need it the most.
Well, and I think, Rachel, you bring up a really good point, is that we can no longer, there's no one group that is going to be able to address all the needs that we have right now and in the coming months. It's not going to be just corporate, it's not going to be just nonprofit, and it's not just going to be government policy. It's going to be a real collaborative effort. We need to have more intentionality in terms of how we partner, like you're describing. How do you get the product in, following the expertise you have with international policies that already exist, and then what policies in the future do we need to change in order to make a future crisis more manageable?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that, this is all, the word unprecedented is probably going to be overused in all conversations and discussions. And apologies, I'm having some technical issues with my visual here. I'll try and fix it in a second. But I think that this is different, because usually, especially within the humanitarian field, there are some issues, and they're all usually happening somewhere else. And there's a number of folks that need help somewhere else. This is all happening to us. This is happening, significantly domestic US, and so that is having a real impact on what organizations need to do and can do, right? Yeah. So let me just add a couple of comments from Airlink's perspective. In terms of how we work, we're a nonprofit, as I've already said, but we're focused on long-term partnerships with airlines, both the passenger and the cargo carriers, providing dependability, uniformity, and organizational structure in chaotic environments. And I think that one of the key things we're talking about, complementary partnerships and more deliberate alignment, is where that partnership can help both parties. And so from Airlink's perspective, responding to a disaster, understanding what the right needs are and how to support most effectively is something that's really very difficult for commercial organizations to do. And so I think that is an area where Airlink helps the aviation sector. We are from the aviation sector, and so that is kind of a role we play. But I think at the same time, we can really help carriers or nonprofits understand and be able to align with carriers to help knock down some of those cost barriers to move, because it is expensive to move cargo and responders around the world within the US. And so there's a real complementary sort of partnership there. And part of what we do is, really ensure that there's a near zero impact on airlines businesses, because they are able to do it efficiently and effectively. And we focus on the reporting back to not only on the CSR, but also the ESG requirements. So I think that successful partnerships, especially in times of resource constraint, are more than just a transfer of resources between from one entity to another, but really where each partner removes a burden and enhances the operation of each other. So where they can have real value. One of the things that occurs to me, kind of a follow-on question here, is many businesses and entire industries are being substantially impacted by COVID-19, and you've all given examples of where your organization is helping. Specifically looking at the aviation sector, it's being impacted just as much, if not more, as many and most industries out there. And so I wonder, is there, through your partnerships, are there any things that businesses can learn and benefit from, a greater level of partnership with the nonprofit sector? Well, Rachel, I wonder if maybe I'll let whoever wants to go first on that one, but I wonder if there's any way, that there's that you can benefit from greater relationships with the nonprofit sector.
Sure. I think one of the things that FedEx has definitely learned through our collaborations has been a little bit with sourcing and certain things of sourcing of PPE. I think once PPE became very critical, there became situations where even we're looking for PPE to help support our frontline team members. And so our nonprofits, I think the nonprofits have coordination and collaborations with people that we can learn from in the world about PPE in terms of navigating sometimes with paperwork to certain countries. I know we worked with Direct Relief specifically initially on some of the making sure documentation was correct and having certain things translated. And they helped in turn share that with another nonprofit organization as well as a FedEx customer to help them understand how they could prepare the documentation correctly to make sure that it qualified shipping to China through Green Channel. I think there, again, there's a lot to learn whether you're working in that public-private partnership to really understand and see a different perspective of in ways that maybe we provide a lot of things in how to be efficient in logistics and certain things, but there's definitely things that they have taught us as well in terms of preparation that's been helpful and looking at things through a different lens. So I think it definitely can work both ways in regards to that relationship. And again, I think that also they're in touch with people on the ground. Like there's a lot of things that are happening locally that team members are passionate about that need help with. Sometimes we find team members find extra PPE that they want to help distribute, or they've collected something and they want to help deliver it locally, but they don't know the right organization. We've really tapped into a lot of our nonprofits to help us identify organizations that are really good that will be able to leverage and utilize whatever that collection may be, whether it's food insecurities, we want to make sure we're directing them to the right local food bank network that will get it to the most people, whether it's PPE getting it to that right local hospital that could be able to leverage those additional masks that have been found, or even people who've been making masks. Again, I think there's great opportunity in that collaboration and discussion.
That's great. Thanks so much, Chris. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. When our strength is obviously transporting people, and so we have been working with a number of hospitals. We've been working with nonprofits to make sure that we're able to get talent, people in the medical field, from one area of the country to another. We transported people early on to New York when the pandemic was at its worst in that community. Again, we can't do that without really informed, on the ground information. And our nonprofits do that for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very critical role in terms of just making sure that we're working with credible nonprofits who know the field, they know their communities, and that way it makes our work more effective. It makes the intentions that we have, it makes them more impactful. And right now, obviously, the situation is life and death. So those relationships that help inform the good work that we can do is critical. I think the communication is the most important thing, that if it's not established with a nonprofit, it's too little too late to try to do that with a nonprofit if you don't have that network strong and viable.
Yeah, I understand. Susie, what are your thoughts?
We built flexport.org based on interviewing nonprofits and assessing their needs. So they had been part of our network from the beginning. And the way how we consider impact is we're not necessarily looking at ourselves and look at how good we can be, but what is the impact that we can enabling in the network that we're serving? How can we empower all the different stakeholders we work with to actually make an impact? And so the two big lessons that we really learned from nonprofits is, one, they help us to engage our commercial clients and how they can donate excess inventory. And one of the ways they're doing so is by sharing the need, not only in the moment, but also sharing, for example, in long-term recovery, what is needed. Oftentimes, many folks and businesses might be aware of a certain situation when it's in the news, but as soon as it's kind of out of sight, they might not hear about it, and they're also not maybe knowledgeable about how they can help. And so by working with nonprofits who are really committed to long-term program delivery and really standing, with the communities throughout the crisis, we get those constant signals and also learn about all the secondary effects of certain crises. And by sharing the information, they show us so many different ways of how so many different companies and industry can get involved. And the second way that we are really learning from nonprofits is around just like impact and storytelling. So they're also helping us to assess the impact and how we can work together in a way that is most helpful for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks, Susie. And I actually think, from my perspective, I think, businesses, granted, work for a nonprofit, but I think there is a certain amount that business can learn from nonprofit, and something we've been thinking about at Airlink that really sort of illustrates this point. In terms of the aviation sector, as I've mentioned, it's been significantly impacted. You're seeing a reduction in seats offered by airlines of about 40 to 50%. Reduction in anywhere from 2.4 to 3 billion passengers for the year, and a potential loss of $400 billion in gross operating revenues, all while and against the backdrop, as you've all mentioned here, you're still continuing to help the communities in which you serve. But I think, while travel restrictions, may have eased a little bit, as airlines get up and running again, which will take time, especially given public concerns and things are changing daily. We see that in the news. There will be, and amidst the uptick of COVID-19 cases, I do see that there is a complementary sort of scenario between nonprofits needing to travel and airlines needing to establish operations. And, in short form, I think nonprofits do need cheaper air travel and air cargo capacity that reflects the economic outlook, which we've talked about earlier in the survey results. And we have a COVID-19 crisis developing in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and we've got hurricane season in the Caribbean and a number of other predictable crises unfolding around the world. And so, I think while air cargo carriers have continued to operate and have really been a lifeline for many, we've witnessed the creativity of passenger carriers. You mentioned earlier, Southwest carrying cargo in the cabin. And I think that, that's a scenario that's probably going to remain around for a while until the passenger traffic recovers. And so we have two sectors, the aviation sector with the capacity to spare and nonprofits with unsatisfied demand for cost-effective cargo transport. And we have a number of crises which will continue for a while, long enough to perhaps warrant planning and some small-scale logistical reorganization of these movements. So this is something, somewhat basic we're considering internally within Airlink. But I think, now listen, you've mentioned it a little bit, a number of, or a couple of you, cash is so tremendously important to all of us, not just nonprofits. And for those folks listening, work for, companies, I know times are tough, but I would urge you to consider this in how you support your nonprofit partners in terms of flexibility. But I think there are sort of more natural ways to align the non-cash support as somewhat of a complementary way to help nonprofits. And I think that, we've already had a couple of good comments on those. But Christine, I don't know if you have, some thoughts and on how sort of more natural non-cash support has been provided to some of your partners.
I think what we've been doing is looking at what other non-cash items we have. Right now, we're looking, again, the business is down. The enterprise has been dramatically hurt, like you described a minute ago, Steve, with the downturn in travelers. So we do continue to use in-kind contributions. But those two kind of are going to be measured. We are looking at other things in our business, like cargo, like the food that we have on the aircraft, to make sure we get it out before it expires, so that there's just not a loss. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's part of the beauty of being able to really move quickly within such a large corporation. And on the non-cash side, we are really just trying to conserve as much as possible on the cash, and on the non-cash side, be adept, be quick with whatever resources we can to get and deploy them out quickly.
Yeah. And no, great. And Rachel, how about FedEx?
Yeah, obviously, we would love to be able to dole out more cash, and but we do, we are working with some of our nonprofits on our cash and kind availability. And again, we are definitely we are still transporting lots of different assets, but we do want to make sure we are getting very rich impacts on what we're moving. Also trying to be able to tell a compelling story with the nonprofit. I think that's a key to be able to hopefully justify and, get additional funding for what we're doing as well. We want to make sure those things kind of balance out. And then, again, we want to encourage, what other support can we provide that may be that, again, preparing for future initiatives. How can we leverage our team members to help, again, prepare those hygiene kits or meal kits before those crises happen? How can we work with leveraging our skills-based volunteers to help redesign or work on logistical aspects There's right now it feels like there is no downtime, but why, even though there's a lot of people working from home with COVID, there could be times to really focus on, again, leveraging that skills-based volunteers to re-engineer logistical things, to consult on packaging, even looking at opportunities. Our FedEx office team has really been collaborative this year and providing some free opportunities, not free opportunities, but in-kind opportunities, really, to help do some printing for some of our nonprofits, whether it's talking about COVID-related items, and those activities as well. So I think, again, being collaborative, being creative, again, working with our peers to see how we can, collaboratively stretch our in-kind budgets to help each other. We're doing that again with International Paper and the Global Food Banking Network to, again, get boxes of food to other people as well. And then again, looking at if there's local resources that can help assist on short deliveries and working with our other operating companies like FedEx Freight, FedEx Ground to help deliver on certain in-kind shipments as well that may be smaller but just as impactful to those people. We worked with Custom Critical, has been a really great collaborator in the FedEx team to help deliver dairy products, which you think at food banks, it's hard because a lot of them they're outside, it's hot. You got to keep things like milk, refrigerated cheese items kind of cold. And we, are working with the Custom Critical team and Dairy Max, which is part of a government agency to support local farmers, and the local food banks in like Texas and Oklahoma to help deliver milk to those people in need. So they're not just getting shelf-stable supplies or meat supplies when they're going through those drive-thrus at the local schools or local underserved communities, but they're able to get those milk products. So again, I think, again, being creative, collaborative, and trying to just re-engineer and rethink things and ask questions. And the worst I think that people can say is, no, we're not ready to partner with you right now, but maybe there's future opportunities that it might fit into the right situation. So creative and collaborative, I think is key.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And Susie, I mean, you're the founder of your organization, and you sort of built the entire organization on these principles, right? I'm sure you have some strong thoughts on these.
For us, it's really important that all of our contributions are sustainable. So that means that we can provide enduring and long-term support for the nonprofits. I feel oftentimes, it's great if there's a certain disaster in a certain nonprofit in a certain region or cause area gets a lot of attention, but it's really hard for them to plan if they don't know if, the business that are helping you out today is also around tomorrow, right? Will they provide consistent help even if, something isn't in the news? So like all of our kind of programs and contributions are set up in a way that we are, providing and supporting our partners long term. And one point that I really like that Rachel just made was about collaboration. I feel that nonprofits play a really important role in also matching almost like companies together, right? So like a great example is Airlink. Sometimes in the business world, right, you might think like, oh, it might be competition, or it might be a business or company that you don't have a direct relationship with. But by being an organization, right, in the case of Airline, that is matching airline space with other nonprofits, but also the freight forwarders, we can pool our different resources together to then setting something up that we by ourselves couldn't have pulled off. So I think there is a really, really important component into kind of, joining forces. And then by everyone giving a little bit, we can do quite a lot.
And I think to that point too, Susie, I totally agree when Rachel was speaking about those cross collaborations, because those happen on different planes. I think there's also a very compelling reason to have really honest, genuine conversations with your nonprofit partners, because even though a need surfaces, what really is the need? So if somebody says, I need $100,000, you need to be able to be vulnerable and say, what for? What is it you really need? Everybody needs money. You can never have enough money. So what is it that you really need that for? What are you going to purchase with it? What are you going to transport with it? And then I think that there's also a very compelling case for us as people in the corporate world to help each other match the corporate world to the nonprofit world. So like my network of organizations, whether it's Deloitte or Abbott or Stryker or Pfizer, all of the corporations that I know within the arena of the Fortune 500s, that we too are sharing that information about the nonprofits and making those cross collaborations to the nonprofits. Because I think the corporate sector is looking for that cross collaboration too. How do they get their medical resources to the people who really need it in the nonprofit world? And they may not have that network set up. So the cross collaborations are important within the nonprofit sector, but it's also important across from the corporate sector to the nonprofit. And a lot of times there's a lot of protectionism, I think, that creeps in about, no, this company is only given to this organization or this nonprofit. And we need to be able to sort of erase those boundaries. You know, this is a time when we have to take care of each other, and we need to sort of erase those boundaries and reposition the priorities for caring for each other.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really important. Well, Chris, you know, I think we have 3 or 4 minutes here to close the session. But you know, with so much we read in the media that's you know, let's face it, that's pretty stressful and concerning. In addition to adapting to our own personal on our own personal levels with work and home life balance, you know, I think it'd be helpful to close on somewhat of a positive note. So let me ask each of you if you can take a minute or so, looking to the future, what should we be feeling positive about?
I think, am I muted?
No, you.
I think that this is a wonderful time for us to reassess how we care about each other. And I think that having that new vision will take us very far. I think that we're going to go through very sharp pain. I don't think that's going to go away. I think that some systems might break. But I'm also encouraged by what my mom has always told me since I was young. She always used to say, everything can be fixed, even a broken heart. So if we can break a heart and fix it, commit to helping each other, I think that we can pretty much accomplish anything.
And the mask is a very interesting representation of that, right? It's not about you; it's about protecting everyone else around you. Rachel, tell me some positive things you think you're seeing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive things. I love what Chris just said, and I liked how she touched at the very beginning a little bit on diversity and inclusion, how that's changing the world. So I think a couple things is, one is, I mean, honestly, COVID's not going to go away. It's not. There's no quick fix. There's nothing like this, and then we've got lots of change going on. With just, you know, the people reacting and wanting to learn and understand more about diversity and inclusion. And again, it's something like at FedEx is not just a short-term thing. And if you're interested in learning more, we have a great report out on our FedExCares.com website. I'll just make a quick plug for that. And lots of really good stories about all of our COVID stuff as well. But, you know, change is hard, but I think change with how is this going to all end with COVID? How's this all going to end with the change in discussions about race, religion, LGBTQ, all these different things? It's a calm before the storm, and you know it's kind of everything's raining down all at once with, you know, a global pandemic, lots of change with you know, again, understanding. But hopefully, you know, this rain will bring about like a spring and flowers, and I think it's a great time. Even though we are having to do a lot of self-isolation, just to reassess things and reassess being with your family and friends and being able to connect in a different way, which I think has been kind of a blessing in disguise. We're able to reconnect with people probably we haven't talked to in a while, and have those hard conversations about change and discussion. So I think those are things those are things that are good. And I think it also gives us time to plan and re-engineer and get creative and collaborative for the future. So again, I think it's going to be hard, but I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of all the labor afterwards.
Thank you, Rachel. And Susie, you have the last word.
It looks like I got the last 10 seconds. So I would thank Chris and Rachel for your fantastic work and sharing all the insights. And it's really great to see what your organizations have been doing. I think at Flexport, I'm really optimistic about the new partnerships that I have seen, right? So this unique situation needed new organization, new folks to step up, and kind of, leveraging the expertise from nonprofits has been really successful. And I hope that those new kind of partnerships will also maintain in the future. I'm also really hopeful about the empathy that was being built. So hopefully in the future, if there's an incident in a different region in the world, we can remember how it was to not have access to critical healthcare products, right? And hopefully we will support the same nonprofits to deliver their projects in different regions in the world. And just remember that it's really helpful to support each other.
That's great. Thank you, Susie. And thank you to each of you for being part of the panel and for everything each of your organizations and you individually are doing. I think that's all we have time for today. I want to thank the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and all of you who are watching and listening. Sorry for a couple of technical issues during my performance here. But please be sure to check out the agenda over the next couple of days. I know there's a number of other sessions coming up. They're pretty exciting. Thanks so much. That's it from us.